Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about interesting topic, dating and how that applies to this fundamental family model. So if we look at dating, what the biggest part of dating that most people are trying to figure out is how is making those things work. Finding someone who wants to use the same strategy as I do, same structure and same culture. That can be tricky, and if you look at it, there's a side of awareness on what strategy you're actually trying to pursue. Based on what I've seen and even my own experience, I would say the vast majority, 99 to 100% of people don't actually know what they're trying to do, right? They don't know. A lot of people, they haven't really cognitively thought about it. So if you look at what strategy, I see a lot of people who are thinking, well, my strategy is I'm going to get married when I'm young, then I'm going to have children. If it's the man, this is kind of the traditional model that people were using. The man will do the work, the wife will take care of the house, and we'll live happily ever after. The issue that you're starting to see, I think I talked about it in an earlier video, was that structure doesn't work in some cases where you have an oversupply of one gender or another. If you look at over in China right now, a number I've heard is they have about 30 million more men than women, right? So that strategy is not going to work very well for the man in that scenario. In the case of the US, there's a large number, millions of more women than men in the US, especially if you consider available men, when you consider prison populations and some of those things. So when you're dating as a man or a woman, it's very useful to understand what is your strategy, what's the structure, what's your culture. So I'll go through a couple scenarios. I had a woman who was talking to me, very, very successful in business. She had 2 kids from a previous marriage. I asked her, what was she looking for in her dating? She was like, well, I want to marry a guy and I want to have 2 more kids and I want to keep continuing my career. And I was like, well, how do you think that's going to work? Who are you trying to marry? A man who has more earning power than you so you can stay home with the children? Are you trying to marry a man who has less earning power than you and he'll stay home with the children? What is the plan here? What's your thinking? And she said, oh, I don't know, I hadn't really thought. I'm not really attracted to the men who aren't very successful. And I said, so how do you think that's going to work out when you have these men who are successful and they're thinking probably, I may want a wife who's more focused on developing some of, either the human or the social assets while I develop the monetary assets. And she was like, well, I hadn't thought about that. So some pieces, in some places that can be very difficult because there's not a lot of, I haven't met a lot. There may be a lot of men who want to stay home with children, but I haven't met them. And then there seem to be a whole lot more women who want to have a career than men who want to stay home with the kids. So there could be a balance. I mean, you could go into a 2-earner household type scenario where you're both working and then you hire a maid or something, but often, they don't want that. They're like, well, I want my kids to be taken care of by a parent. Well, how do you figure? It's just a logistics question. So in dating, it's often difficult to think, well, what's my real strategy here, right? So some other collisions I've seen, there was another woman, she was in a relationship she was cohabiting, she had a kid from another marriage, and they were looking at getting married. Kind of that same scenario, she's like, well, I want to keep working. Well, but her partner who she was cohabiting with didn't want to keep her, he was like, well, my mom never worked, and once I get wealthy enough, I want to be an entrepreneur, and once I get wealthy enough, then I want to be able to retire you. She's like, well, I don't want to retire, I want to keep working. And so there was kind of this inherent collision, and then I talked to her later. She said that she went and talked with her partner, and kind of work through those things to figure out what's the actual plan and strategy. Because if you look, one of the things with the strategy is like, what vision, if you thought like a company, if you're thinking two companies are going to merge, why would you merge these companies? It's not clear. One of the factors that, I'm trying to remember the book's name, but there was a woman who said in the past, the structure that was needed to survive, like being a farmer, was actually a two-person career. The farmer and then the farmer's wife, who did a lot of the stuff in the farmhouse, milk, butter, prepared a lot of things. It wasn't that the farmer could just live alone. He wouldn't be able to do enough on his own. So he had to have the farmer's wife, and of course the farmer's wife couldn't be alone either because she needs the farmer to kind of produce those things. So it was kind of this two-person career to think of. Well, now with society and our specialization, now we have two separate careers, right? This woman may be a marketer and this man may be an engineer. Well, why are you merging the marketing and engineering company? What is the vision that you're trying to merge with? What do you want? Well, I want more kids. Well, does he want more kids or does she want more kids? However you're thinking about this. So when you're dating, there's a lot of collisions now because historically it was, I'm going to be a farmer's wife because that's what you do to survive, or a farmer. Right now it's getting much more, well, I'm successful. I don't really need a man there. I have my children. Seems like I'll lose flexibility. I don't know what I really am after. So getting some clarity on that can be pretty tricky. Especially on those scenarios. So one of the other pieces, like I said, there is a two-person household, or a two-income producing household where both people go to work. That has its advantages, right? If two people are going to work, they're spending their time and abilities, boom, to go to work, which is going to end up with more money. The downside that I've seen, my wife, she actually teaches dance. The downside that you find is that my wife, or that we're both earning money, but we don't have as much time for the social investment, right? So when you have this social investment that's lacking, quite often it becomes much more stressful on the relationship because you don't have as much mental support that's not really tied to your job, right? You lose a job, great, your support system goes, you didn't have time for friends, and therefore a lot more stress, mental health stuff comes in. So that's kind of the two income. So it's really like, what are you trying to actually achieve? You want a two income household? You're gonna go one income, which one, who's gonna do what, what's the role, what's the structures? So that's why dating can get really complex now, whereas historically the roles were much more laid out for people.